Home Education by Charlotte Mason. When Mason discusses the teaching of foreign languages, she says, French should be acquired as English is, not as a grammar, but as a living speech. So Mason's bucking the explicit teaching of a grammar, and she's saying we need to make language more alive for the children. So what does this mean according to Mason? Well, she continues to cite a man named Francois Gouin, who actually was a French linguist in the 1800s, and he wrote a book called The Art of Teaching and Studying Languages. And in this book, he begins by talking about his own failures as he tries to pick up German. And his efforts are quite extensive. He starts by trying to learn grammar and irregular verbs in German. And he says, unsuccessful result. I'm literally reading the chapters off of the table of context. The study of roots, second deception. An attempt at conversation, disgust and fatigue, reading and translation, their worthlessness demonstrated. It's basically a diary of how hard he's trying to be able to use German in a conversation. And no matter how much he learns the grammar, the irregular verbs, he even goes into reading the dictionary, he cannot. When he tries to use it, it just is not working. So you're feeling pretty bad for Francois here. And then, by chapter 11, a child of 3 years old, development of language in nature school, new point of departure. So he begins to see in his 3-year-old nephew that the ear and not the eye is the organ in being able to use a language. So essentially what Francois Gouin is doing, he's becoming a pioneer in language acquisition studies. And he's flipping the script. He's saying, language is not something to be learned. Language is something to be acquired. It might sound like a small difference, but it actually makes a huge difference when you're talking about teaching and studying. So when we talk about what can we do to help students acquire language, and when I say acquire, I mean have it in their minds, dream in it, be able to use it in an actual conversation with a native speaker, we need to start by getting them to assign their own value to the language, to put themselves into it. And when they start to see the language as something that they can actually use to communicate, they're going to want to communicate with it. So Francois Gouin has a very extensive methodology. He goes through the whole thing in his book. Charlotte Mason just pulled out bits and pieces, and she talks about it in Home Education in the series, and he says that basically the verb is what needs to be focused on. It's the living bridge between thought and act. So he uses verbs to be able to get the students to take things that they're familiar with and put different words to them so that they're starting to use them in their own everyday lives. Here at the Organic Language Project, we take the work of Francois Gouin, we pair it with what modern-day linguists have confirmed about the best methodologies for teaching and studying languages, and we give it a twist. We bring learners together across borders so that they can become providers of living language to each other. So this not only allows students to acquire the language as opposed to learn it, but it ultimately gives them the best opportunity to form a relationship with the language, to assign their own value to it, because they will see the language as their key to form a relationship with each other.